The reading is taken from Psalm 104, verses 1 to 18, and can be found on page 606 of the Bibles. Praise the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty. He wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent and lays the beams of his upper chambers on their waters. He makes the clouds his chariot and rides on the wings of the wind. He makes winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. He set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. You covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains, but at your rebuke the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder they took to flight. They flowed over the mountains. They went down into the valleys, to the place you assigned for them. You set a boundary they cannot cross. Never again will they cover the earth. He makes springs pour water into ravines. It flows between the mountains. They give water to all the beasts of the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. The birds of the air nest by the waters. They sing among the branches. He waters the mountains from his upper chambers. The earth is satisfied by the fruit of his work. He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for man to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth. Wine that gladdens the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread that sustains his heart. The trees of the Lord are well watered, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. There the birds make their nests. The stork has its home in the pine trees. The high mountains belong to the wild goats. The crags are a refuge for the conies. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Stella. So I'm going to invite Phil to come on up, and Margaret and Margot, would you come and join me? Phil, I think everyone knows you, but tell us, how long have you been a part of this church family for?
About 10 years.
Great. And how long have you been concerned about God's creation for?
A lot longer than that.
Great, good job. Margaret, you worship down at St Mark's in Broomhill, which was the first church in our diocese to get a Gold Eco Church Award. That was right, last year. Yes. That's incredible. And now you're also doing some work with the diocese. Could you tell us more about that work that you're doing?
Well, shall I just say how it's happened? Because we got to our gold, which was a big challenge we set ourselves. And it was fantastic, wasn't it? Because, you know, you have to have everybody on board to do the gold, and everybody has to support it, which was a great feeling for our small group that were, you know, spearheading it. So that was very encouraging and supportive. And then we said, what next? And I emailed Arosh, are you planning a platinum? You know, I mean, what are we keeping having to go and give all this evidence and everything? And they said, no, your job now is to try and encourage and support other churches. And then Bishop Pete came to the service at our church, a special service, and he came along and said, you have to go out there and support other churches. And then we have there's a national bishop for the environment, and he said, you have to support other churches. So we're doing as we're told. Yeah, so we're like on a mission to do what we can, because people get a bit daunted And actually, a lot of it isn't that hard. It's just about how do you do it and examples from different places. They've done it this way, these people are doing it that way. There isn't like a set of right answers and things. And so I'm now what's called a diocesan champion for Eco Church. It's, you know, voluntary. And I'm working with Kathy Rhodes, who is our diocesan environment officer, and a small team at the diocese. And we're just looking to link people up, share good ideas, share resources. There's more and more resources coming online and becoming available for things that individual churches find difficult or impossible to do on their own. And we just want to sort of share our enthusiasm, really.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And Margot, you also worship down at St Mark's.
I do.
And have a real passion for God's creation. How does that work out for you?
Goodness gracious. Well, where do I start? I do a lot of art, so I do a lot of drawing and painting. And I think anybody who does arty things or draws, you have to look. You have to really look, not just glance at things, but you notice how the seasons change, how light changes. And I think it makes you much more observant of the world around you. So one of the paintings I brought this morning is actually of the Arran Coastal Path, which I walked with a friend many years ago. But the east coast, which faces Scotland, is pristine, or it was pristine anyway. So there's miles of clean pebble beaches spreading out into the distance. And then you walk round onto the west coast, and the bits that are inaccessible from the road, but there's still a path through, I mean, it's just like walking through Parkwood Springs Tip. It's terrible. And it's the westerly winds bringing all the rubbish and the detritus from cruise ships. I mean, it's appalling, really. It's somewhere you want to get out of as soon as possible. And it just makes you very aware of what man is doing to this beautiful creation, this world. And I wanted to do something in some small way to play my part in doing something about it. And so I joined the Eco Church Environment Group at St Mark's.
So before this service, in the newsletter, we sent out a questionnaire to people, just asking them some questions about how they relate to God's creation. And one of the questions on there, we asked, name one thing in the natural world that gives you joy. And people spoke about garden birds and birdsong and spring flowers and Wyman Brook and the crags, which are just really close to us and so accessible. Margot, I wonder if you could reflect on ways that we can allow those things from the natural world to encourage our faith and our spirituality and our discipleship.
Well, I mean, there's lots of very practical things that you can do. But I think on a spiritual level, I think it's just taking time to be still and to look and to be aware of our environment and to ask ourselves the question, you know, what are we doing to help or hinder that beautiful creation? And the answers will come. So I think it is that stillness and looking. On a very practical level, there are loads of things that we can do. I'm through the Eco Church programme. I mean, every church is different. And so the land that it's got available is different, and people's own gardens or flats or houses, we've all got a different environment. But we can all do small things that will make a difference. Whether it's having a wildflower patch or making a little bug hotel or bird boxes and feeding the birds. There's all sorts of things that we can do that are all in that Eco Church programme.
Amazing. You sort of moved on there from just like submersing ourselves in the beauty of God's creation and enjoying that into how we start to care for that. Margaret, I wonder if you could help us reflect on why the church should care. Like, obviously, this is a big deal in culture right now, but why is this an issue for the church?
It's an issue because we are stewards of God's creation. It's intrinsic to our Christian faith that we should care for God's creation, of which we are but a part. And perhaps we've forgotten that. Perhaps we think that we're in charge and creation is for us, and we need to rediscover ourselves as being part of that wonderful creation that God has made. And we are tasked with actually putting into practice that wonderful story from Genesis. God finished creation on the sixth day and said, and it was good. And we need to keep that going and make sure it is good, and everything is able to thrive. And that's not what's happening at the moment. We're going in the opposite direction. The natural world and our entire ecosystem are severely threatened. Many of us are extremely anxious, or we even try not to think about it because it's so distressing. And we're not certain what changes we need to make. But I'm very encouraged that the Church of England have been very, very bold now. They're reiterating it's the fifth mark of mission that we should look after God's creation. And we've got this big environment programme going on. We've got the target for 2030 for net zero. There's £120 million allocated to a change programme. Phil and I were part of a net zero conference on Wednesday where we heard from the director of the national programme, and lots of encouraging, very uplifting things where we feel that not only can we make a huge difference, but we can actually show the rest of the world that we have that commitment and we're going to follow it through. In my view, I think it's the challenge of our era, and we are called to rise to this challenge and meet it.
Our church here is part of 4 denominations, as you all know, and one of those is Anglican. What has the Anglican Church, specifically maybe the Diocese of Sheffield, committed to in terms of tackling this issue?
So, in practical ways, all of our churches are encouraged to sign up to Eco Church. It's a fantastic programme, covers all areas of church life, and is a real good framework and a tool. I know you're already an Eco Church, so you've got your bronze, so you're there with that. We're also asked to do our energy footprint tool to actually have a look at the energy use in our churches and reflect on that. Phil was telling me he filled it in last year. Those are practical things. We're also asked to look at our buildings and our land and how are they heated and what energy do we use and is it renewable and have we got enough insulation? Do we have good enough lighting that's sustainable? Those kind of practical things. And there are buildings officers and a net zero programme officer who can actually support churches and help with that. And resources, as I say, coming through more centrally now. So it's kind of a mixture.
Those people have visited Luke's and advised us as well. So we're picking their brains on how we can be more environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I understand that the diocese is looking by last year to have 10% of local churches registered with Eco Church and 5% getting a bronze award. Did they manage to achieve that goal last year?
Yes.
And by 2026, they'd love to have 40% of local churches registered and 30% with at least a silver award.
Yes.
How are we moving towards that goal for 2026?
Yeah, we're doing really well, actually. We're a bronze eco-diocese. And actually, we've set ourselves a target to be a silver eco-diocese within 2 years of getting our bronze. So these are some of the targets that we need to meet. And actually, a lot of churches are now signing up. So we've got a lot of registered churches and a lot of churches who've reached bronze. Fewer churches have managed to get from bronze to silver. Each step is a big step to go. So we want to see how can we support and resource those churches that have already got bronze, like yourselves, to get that jump to silver. We've got one church who are hoping to get their goal fairly soon out at Stannington. Good luck to them. Let's hope that they manage that. But also those churches that have just registered and are maybe not quite sure what they're doing, to give them as much, that's part of my job, to give them as much help and support as they can to get to the bronze. And churches are doing loads already. I sat down with one church this week and went through the whole survey, and there's loads and loads of ticks that church is already doing. So that's where I can hope to sort of encourage people and say, well, you know, you're 3/4 of the way there already. You just need to think about some other activities that can get you over that line. So we're doing really well, actually.
That's fantastic. You mentioned that we did get our Bronze Eco Church Award already, and we actually received the certificate for that just last year, and Myra Wilson came and showed us at the Autumn Church meeting. Phil, I wonder if you could tell us what we've been doing since then, what kind of actions we've been taking, what we've improved on.
Quite a range of things. It means things, as we've already said, like looking at our lighting, the effectiveness of our boilers, at getting advice on that. In the longer term, come 2029, I think it is, we won't be allowed to have a new gas boiler. When the current ones wear out, we'll have to have more innovative ways of heating, and we've got a plan for that in the long term. The grounds outside, we haven't got a traditional churchyard, but we have got some green space. We're looking at things like bird boxes and that, and perhaps working with the children to sort of see how that's panning out. Some of the things that qualify us for Eco Church we've been doing for years. We've got a twin toilet. We use fair trade tea and coffee exclusively. We're looking at replacing other stuff that we use in terms of consumables by stuff which is recycled and more environmentally friendly. So there's a whole gamut of small steps we can do. Simply making sure that the building is maintained properly. The diocesan conference that Margaret and myself were at on Wednesday was very hot on this, on sort of maintaining the building, making sure we haven't got leaks, and particularly through Keith Sterling work over the years, we need a new buildings manager to replace him, but making sure we're doing stuff like that properly. So it's a lot of small steps, but they matter.
They do.
That's ways in which we can make a difference.
We have spent several £1,000s patching up our roof over the last couple of months, and we think we're nearly there. We think we have stopped pretty much all of our leaks, but that is a key thing in terms of helping the building to be more efficient. So that's a good thing too.
One other thing I forgot is greener energy tariffs as well. In some ways, all the results of the Ukraine war and so on have made green energy a better economic bet than it has always been, but that's still going in the right way. It's a good step.
We asked you what you wanted to see us do as a church, and you said things like replacing the heating system or heating controls, heat pumps and solar panels, keeping doors closed, making better use of our green spaces. Margaret, I wonder if you could reflect, some of those are quite financially intensive projects. How do we weigh wanting to engage with some of those things from an ecological perspective, but also weighing the fact that we have limited finances and we need to, you know, try and cover everything?
Yeah. You have to look ahead. There isn't a quick fix that churches can do like that will just solve their problems, because almost no church is in that situation. So the key thing is to start to recognise for the building what the challenges are, and then say, how does it need to change? And that's where specialist advice can come and help. And then you have to work out a plan how to get from A to B, of which how much will that cost obviously comes into it. And costs are changing all the time, going up and going down. And part of that is also looking around and seeing what grants and other help are available. So it's important not to be put off at stage one by thinking we'll never do it, it's all too hard, but actually to think, break it down into steps and a plan starts to make the whole thing much more manageable. But don't forget that the Eco Church programme isn't just about buildings and practical things like that. The worship and teaching is a massive section, and here we are doing this today, which actually, you know, that's another tick on the survey that's really important that we do that. And the community and global engagement, I can see from your website you're engaged with 3 amazing projects. And lifestyle is really important, what all of us go out and do when we're not in the church building as well, and the rest of the influence we have in our workplaces and our communities. So it needs to be like joined up thinking, and we need to look at all the parts of our lives as to what must we change and how might we be able to do it, and who could we work with to make those changes happen. That's how I think about it.
So we've sort of, that's really helpful because you've just moved us on from thinking about church but also thinking about our own personal involvement. So this is the tricky question for you. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, around 70% of harmful emissions come from just 100 companies worldwide. It seems like the individual contribution to climate change is really, really small. So what is the point in us actually making any effort at all when we're pitched against such massive polluters in corporate and government circles?
There are lots of things that we can read and hear about that are really, really discouraging, and that's one of them, and that people throw at you, and you just feel deflated, don't you, when you hear things like that. But I think people who are passionate about the climate, I think they've taken heart from previous historic movements that have really changed the world, and looking at things like the anti-slavery movement and the women's suffragette movement, and think, well, how did those changes happen that really, you know, did change the world and made our societies a much better place? And they didn't happen by waiting for the 100 most important companies to decide that they were going to free their slaves and give their women voting rights. They happened because passionate individuals changed their societies, and they did it together. And they worked together in different ways, all sorts of different groups and different methods and different ways that they put pressure on their societies to change. Including artists, of course. You have to be creative about these things. Art and humour and all sorts of means of communication are really, really important. So that's what I take heart from, and that's the answer I would give you.
So lots of small voices making a big noise.
A few weeks ago we did the big plastic count, and the results of that nationally came out last week. On the evidence that was shoved into that survey, Britain produces 91 billion pieces of plastic rubbish every year. And that campaign is trying to say to government and big companies, change your tack, legislate so that you can actually get your fruit in recyclable containers, not just horrible plastic and so on. That is the way in which grassroots involvement can hopefully make a real difference.
Fantastic. We asked our lovely church family, what have you done to look after the planet, or what do you think you could do? And we had a whole range of answers. We have people buying pre-loved clothing, flying less, holidaying by train, investing in hybrid cars instead of just petrol, commuting by walking, stopping using cling film. We've got people who have taken on a vegetarian diet, people who are cutting down on all of their plastic uses. There seems to be like a real range of responses from people, from quite financial things like hybrid cars down to significant lifestyle things like eating a vegetarian diet, to not using cling film. It seems to me that it's a bit like marginal gains. You just do a little bit and the little bits add up to make a big difference. I just wonder if I could quiz you and say, what things have you done in your household? What's the most recent change you've made in your household? To inspire us, maybe.
Put me on the spot. I'm getting fanatical about light bulbs in the last fortnight. Because we've got low energy lighting mainly, but we've got some blooming halogen downlighters that I'm not happy about. And I've been like researching all these LEDs and what I could swap for what. And I've been up at Wilkinson's Hardware at Broom Hill, and that guy really knows me in there now, because I'm taking in light bulbs and saying, no, if you've got one I can swap for this, and can I take, and if it's not right, can I bring it back again and swap it for another one? So I've really got a little bit obsessional about it, I must admit, but it's quite satisfying. And actually, I hadn't realised these bulbs are cheap, and you can go to a lower wattage, and they are brighter. And I'm thinking, why didn't I do this before?
That's great, winning on every level, that's fantastic. Margot, how about you?
Well, I go along with the no cling film business, that it is a very useful stuff, actually, but you can live life quite happily without it. I've been wrapping sandwiches up in greaseproof paper and putting sauces on top of food in the fridge instead of cling film, which I would have done before. You know, we didn't used to have it, whereas it's something that is there in the kitchen cupboard, so I just don't buy it now.
Yeah, fantastic. Phil, how about you? What's your recent change?
We bought a hybrid car when our previous one needed replacing, but in September we went to Lake Como for our holiday and we went by rail. And yes, it's more expensive than flying and it takes longer, but it's fun and it's a damn sight more environmentally friendly. Air travel is a major polluter, and there are alternatives.
Fantastic. And did you enjoy the travel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like trains anyway, so I'm biased, but but yeah, you know, you see lots of rural France and so on, and experience Italian buses, which is quite an experience. So yeah, great.
So I'm going to come to the congregation in a minute, and I'm going to ask you if you've got any questions for our panel. And while you just have a little cogitate on that, we heard earlier a reading from the Psalms about God's creation. I just wonder if you could ground us in Scripture, and if you could bring any reflections on that Psalm. Any of you?
Yes, I brought something that really inspired me when I read it the other day. And I've also brought, can you see there's a tapestry at the front? That's one of a series of 6 Days of Creation tapestries, which 35 of us at our church got together, and we've stitched these in teams, even people that have never done anything similar to this before. So we had a lovely time doing it, but we've done it to celebrate God's creation, and this is our way of showing it. They're hanging in our church, and we're very happy to lend them out to people. So we love the colours, we love the vibrancies of these pieces of work, and we enjoyed that activity of doing that. But I've got a short reading from Job. And Job was a right old complainer, wasn't he? But actually, he wrote this, and I hadn't seen it before, and it's absolutely wonderful. So from Job 12:7-10, ask the beasts, and they will teach you; the birds of the air, and they will tell you. Ask the plants of the earth, and they will teach you; and the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of every human being. Thank you.
Amazing. Great. Has anyone got any questions that they would like to put to Margaret and Margot? Oh. Okay, do this instead. Turn to your neighbour, chat to them, What have you found? What have you heard that's new, or what have you heard that's really interested you this morning? Chat to your neighbour, and then we will come back.
Well done.
Oh, thank you.
What comes after this bit?
Great. Well, let's draw those conversations to a close. Have we got any questions for the panel that maybe have come out of those conversations? We've got Stella and then over to Edward. We'll take both questions and then we'll answer them together. So, go on.
I was just wondering if there's a particular Christian website or websites where we can go to just to find practical tips of what we can do as a family just to help be more eco-friendly in our own family.
Fabulous. And let's take Edward's question as well.
Can I just ask, why is it that in a conversation about the ecology and the global warming and all of that, that there is so little mention of the poorest of the world? And I've lived in two of those countries for a total of 14 years. People who don't get enough rain, for example, have no means of getting food because they don't have any money, they don't have a job, they suffer, and some die, or their animals die. And this is why is it there's so little discussion of this? Question time on BBC television a few evenings ago. Not a single questioner asked anything about the poorest people in the world, and I feel that that is a major issue.
Panel, any responses?
To answer Edward's question first, I think Christian organisations have very much focused on the damage that global warming is doing to the third world. If you look at anything that Tear Fund or Christian Aid produced lately, they are very hot on this as well. And some of the non-Christian organisations do raise this as well. But it's certainly a very, very important point to make that our wastefulness, our profligacy, our flying to New York for the weekend and so on, dump massive environmental costs on the poor world. And their weather's going down the pan even more than ours is. You know, we moaned about it raining so much this winter. Farmers in this country are taking a terrible cost from that. And it's only magnified in countries with a more fragile climate. Do you want to say anything else?
So, yeah, there are places, thinking about households, there are places you can go. You can do your own carbon footprint with the World Wildlife Fund, and then they will, and there's an app, or you can do it on the website. They will tell you what your household, what your own carbon footprint is, but also then guide you to lots of different hints and things that you could do to reduce your carbon footprint. There's also an organisation, I think it's creationcare.org.uk.
We've got a slide for that, haven't we, Peter? Creation Care.
Yeah, it's on.
Tell us about that.
Well, I haven't done that myself, but I think it's like a little mini eco-church, but on a household basis, that you can sign up as a household and actually look at what you can do, and they will have resources that are attached to that. So that could be really you know, a nice thing for a family to do, to look at together, or
So-
people living in a shared house.
Great. So this is from the Creation Care website. It's creationcare.org, I think, but if you Googled it, you'd see. And they have sort of 9 areas, I think, that you can do a little quiz on. And while you're doing the quiz, that will also give you ideas of things that you're not doing that you could do. So on this page, they've got travel, food, possessions, and community and global engagement. If you could just go back one, worship and prayer, home and garden. And under each of those, there's like between probably around 20 questions. So that is a really great place to go and get ideas from. You have to create a login to access it, but it's just an email address and a password. And then it will track your answers, and you can come back to it 6 months later, do it again, see if you've made any improvements. They're my answers. There's a lot of bronze going on there. We need to push that up, honey. But this is a great resource, so do try this one.
And you can put a church affiliation down on it, so in 6 months or a year's time, I can come back. I am a sort of supremo controller with access to everybody's data, so I can tell you, well, what a marvellous job you're doing, I hope.
Just to be clear, he's not going to see your individual answers.
No.
He will just see if you've achieved a silver level, and then he could give you a certificate for it.
No, it's not we know where you live, no.
Yeah. Have we got any other questions? Sue?
On a much more local level, I find our council's attitude to plastics very complicated. What does go in the bin? What doesn't? I have only recently, to my shame, discovered what to do with soft plastics. Because they weren't mentioned, as far as I understand, I was chucking them out, and now I do something different. So I just wonder how we can maybe lobby our local council or ask them for more explanation on what goes where. You know, if you have to look at every piece that you do get, however much or little that is, and find a code and learn what... I find it complicated.
I totally agree.
Plastics recycling is a mess on several counts. One can do what one can do. You can take soft plastics, the sort of things that the council says it doesn't want, so the bins outside the co-op at Fulwood. But a lot of plastics recycling isn't recycling, it's dumping in the third world. A few weeks ago we saw some of the baleful effects of this in poorer countries. It's not a happy situation. To give this council some credit, a lot of their recycling is based around the incinerator at Bernard Road, which burns a lot of rubbish to create district heating, which is quite an ecologically good idea. But plastics rather got forgotten in that planning when the thing was being built 10, 12 years ago. So, no, we're not in a particularly good place, but do what you can.
But lobbying sounds a great idea, and you know, why not lobby as a church? You know, I think it sounds more impressive if you say, you know, this our church is worried about this issue rather than just me personally. Do it as a group and write a letter. And you know.
If you've got local elections coming up in a fortnight or whatever it is, if you get any councillors soliciting your votes on the doorstep, then tell them, get it sorted.
Sue, what are you doing with your soft plastic now?
I collect it in an old shopping bag, and then when we go shopping, we put it in the appropriate bin.
Whereabouts?
Well,
Where?
sometimes we go to Sainsbury's in Archer Road, and they have one, but it's a bit obscure. It's not, well, I don't think it's near the main entrance, but, you know, these things need to be sorted. I mean, the fact that we have so many bins locally, each household,
Yeah.
and yet we're still confused.
Yeah. We take our soft plastic to Aldi. I did speak to the council about 3 months ago because I asked them if I could have a bigger blue bin instead of a little blue bin. And they told me that they are currently reviewing their Veolia contract, and they're reviewing their rubbish collection and and the recycling collection too, and that they were open to feedback. So if you wanted to drop them an email at the council, now is actually a really good time to do that. We've got a question over here from Margaret, and we'll make this one the last one. We're going to, I think our children are probably...
It's not a question, but about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, I got a survey from the council. I don't remember what site I was on. I might have been on the council site. And it was all about what do you want in which bin? Do you want this bin bigger? What do you want us to add plastic, this flexi-plastic, into our bin system? So they obviously, I mean, they must be surveying some people since I've had one and filled it in.
Fabulous, that's great. Thank you, Margaret. Okie dokie, I'm going to thank our panellists. Why don't we just show them our thanks? And,